Yana sat alone at home, trying to distract herself from the weight of her sadness. Despite being 6 months pregnant, she couldn't shake off the feeling of despair. Just then, the doorbell rang, indicating the arrival of her friend Nastya. Nastya, who was a couple of years younger, had been a loyal friend to Yana for over 2 years. They had met when Yana and her husband, Petya, moved into the neighborhood. "Hey, Januzia, what's with the long face?" Nastya questioned as she stepped into the room. Yana hesitated for a moment, but ultimately decided to confide in her friend about her troubles. Steeling herself with a deep breath, she confessed, "Nastya, I think Petya is cheating on me." Nastya's surprise was evident as she looked at her friend, a smile tugging at her lips. "What? That's absurd. Why would you even think that? It's impossible." Even Yana couldn't quite explain the source of her suspicions. Petya wasn't coming home significantly late from work, just a few minutes here and there. The family's financial situation was stable, and their intimate life seemed fine too, evident from their unborn child. Yet an unsettling feeling persisted within her, a nagging voice telling her that something was amiss. "I don't know, Nastya. My intuition has been going haywire for over a year now. It's as if he's changed, and he continues to change. I can't shake off the feeling that he's involved with someone else," Yana admitted, her voice laced with uncertainty. Nastya's eyebrows furrowed in confusion as she tried to understand. "But why? He seems devoted to you in every way. I've observed you both closely during our friendship, and the way he looks at you. It's clear he's crazy about you." Yana sighed, grappling with her emotions and her intuition. "I wish I could explain it, Nastya. It's just this lingering sense that won't leave me alone. I can't ignore it anymore. It's tearing me apart. It used to be different, but now things have changed. He rarely makes eye contact with me when I ask him if he loves me. He's evasive, making me feel like I have to beg for his words. There are strange phone calls and texts, even late at night. He claims it's work, but I have my doubts. I'm tempted to go through his phone, but I haven't had the courage yet." Nastya looked at her friend, surprised by her words. "No, going through your husband's phone should be the last resort. Everyone deserves their personal space," she advised. "If he found out, it could create a disaster in your relationship. It might make him feel like you don't trust him. You're right not to invade his privacy by going through his calls and messages." Yana thought Nastya would have a different reaction, but maybe she was right. Plus, he even takes his phone with him to the bathroom now. It's like it's glued to his side. Why does he need it everywhere he goes? "He's probably just playing games or reading something on the internet," Nastya suggested. "You're letting your suspicions get to you, especially when you're pregnant." Deep down, Yana knew she might be fooling herself. She had sensed a growing distance in their relationship for a while now. "We don't even go shopping together anymore. We used to buy groceries together, but now he does it all alone. He even throws away the receipts, so I can't even check the prices of things I'm curious about. And he has changed some of his habits." "What do you mean?" Nastya asked, curious to hear more. Yana pondered for a moment before expressing her thoughts. "It's not easy to tell right away," she began. "When we first moved in, he used to smoke on the balcony, but now he prefers to smoke on the landing or near the entrance. He claims it's more convenient." Her friend, Nastya, chimed in with an opinion. "Oh, come on, Jana. You're pregnant. He's just trying to keep you safe. Be grateful that the smoke doesn't enter the room through the balcony. Not many people have that luxury." Jana sighed, feeling that there was more to it. "But he started doing this even before I was pregnant. And before, we would always say good morning and good night to each other. He used to kiss me before going to bed and embrace me gently. Now it's all gone," she lamented. Nastya dismissed Jana's concerns, assuming that this was just typical behavior from men. "Oh, Jana, you're overthinking it. All men are like that. The honeymoon phase doesn't last forever. Don't jump to conclusions and accuse Petya of things without any solid evidence. He loves you. Jana shook her head, feeling the weight of her doubts. No, Nastya, it's not just in my head. Sometimes it feels like I irritate him, but he never says it aloud. Nastya had grown tired of the conversation, but she knew she had to calm her friend down. Jana, maybe he's just tired from work. That's all. Why are you obsessing over every little detail? Besides, couples can annoy each other sometimes. You've been married for 5 years, remember? It's normal. You speak as if you've been married yourself, Jana retorted. Nastya tried to justify herself. I haven't been married, but I'm a woman. I know a thing or two about relationships. Jana couldn't help but express her frustrations. Then why does he shave in the morning before work instead of before bed? And why does he shower when he comes home instead of before bed? It's as if he's been working on a construction site all day, not sitting in an air-conditioned office. And let's not even get started on the overwhelming amount of perfume he wears. Jana's annoyance was evident, signaling that she was increasingly troubled by these actions. She found herself expecting support from her friend, but it never came. Oh my God, this has nothing to do with it. I mean, he just wants to smell nice. That's not a big deal, is it? Jana replied, not really. The thing is, I've asked him several times not to wear so much perfume. I find strong scents really bothersome. I can't even kiss him when he goes to work. It's like he's doing it on purpose. And why are you always defending him? Nastya hesitated, her words carefully chosen. I'm not defending him, I'm protecting you. I don't want you to lose your husband over something trivial. We live in the same building, and I often run into him on the stairs. If there was anything suspicious, I would have told you. But I've never seen him acting strangely. Doesn't that mean something to you? Jana regarded her friend with skepticism, thinking she was being nonsensical, even bizarre. You act as if you're spying on him through the peephole. How could you possibly know? Don't make things up. No, I can't take this anymore. He's coming home from work today. I'll do it. I'll check his cell phone for any proof. Suit yourself, Nastya replied, but I still don't recommend it. Sorry, I have to go now. My mom's waiting for me. Why did I even come here? Can you lend me some sugar? I don't feel like going to the store. Jana poured a glass of sugar, and Nastya left. Yet Jana's mind remained clouded with doubt, and she couldn't understand why. After talking to her friend, she expected some relief, but instead, her anxiety seemed to deepen. Nastya exited Jana's apartment and glanced around before dialing Petya's number, making her way to the elevator. Hey Petya, make sure to clean your phone before going home. Jana suspects something, and she even mentioned it to me. She's planning to monitor your phone today. Don't forget to delete any suspicious pictures. Also, we need to talk about this. Can you swing by my place after work for a few minutes? My mom is out and my dad is at the cottage. All right? Petya was taken aback by the news, but still proceeded to clean his phone. Today, he purposely decided not to carry it everywhere, giving his wife the opportunity to check it. Later in the evening, he bumped into Nastya, who shared with him the indicators Jana had used to deduce his involvement with another woman. She asked Petya to resolve the situation and ease Jana's worries. Upon arriving home, Petya was greeted with a delicious dinner, as usual. However, his wife seemed quiet and slightly distant. He understood the reason behind her behavior, but didn't want to bring it up. Divorcing Jana was not part of his immediate plans, especially knowing she was pregnant. Leaving a pregnant woman wouldn't reflect well on his character. He couldn't help but feel that he and Jana had drifted apart recently. However, the catalyst for this distance wasn't Nastya, but rather the apartment solely owned by his wife, a gift from his parents. We prepared a deed of gift for her, but it was done after the marriage. Unfortunately, this meant that if anything happened, he would be left with nothing, which deeply hurt him. Although they never directly discussed it, it caused underlying tension between them. Moving into a new place and renovating seemed to change Petya. And then there was Nastya, a beautiful neighbor who lived on the first floor. At first, she became friends with his wife, but soon their friendship took a different turn. Nastya was incredibly kind and understanding, always ready to listen to him and provide comfort when needed. She praised him and always seemed to understand what he desired. Her support was something he felt was lacking in his relationship with Jana. Although his wife also praised him, the issue with the apartment seemed to overshadow any positive actions she took. Nastya was different. There was no ulterior motive, only genuine tenderness and trust. During dinner, Petya casually asked his wife about her day, but his mind was elsewhere, only catching bits and pieces of her story. After dinner, he kissed her cheek and expressed his gratitude, but instead of a joyful response, she looked at him strangely. That night, he didn't rush to the shower immediately after work like he usually did. There was nothing going on with Nastya that day. Sometimes, they would meet at her house if her parents weren't around, or even in the car. Occasionally, they would use the apartment across the street, where Nastya took care of the flowers and fed the cat. The landlady, a flight attendant, was rarely home, and Nastya had kindly offered the space for their encounters. It felt like a precious gift. Before retiring for the night, Petya diligently washed up and even shaved, hoping to please his wife. However, her gaze remained fixed on him when he came back from the balcony where he went to smoke. Yana's thoughts were in disarray, and she no longer felt the urge to pry into his phone. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, painting an unpleasant picture. All that remained was for the final truth to be revealed. Returning from the balcony, Petya slipped into bed and leaned in to kiss his wife. With a gentle tone, he bid her goodnight as he always had. Yana looked at him with disbelief and softly asked the question that had been festering in her mind. "Are you having an affair with Nastya?" Caught red-handed, Petya felt a sense of panic wash over him. He struggled to comprehend how Yana had pieced it all together. What should he do now? Neither a clever nor honest answer came to mind, so he resorted to denial, hoping it would be enough to escape the situation. "I can't believe what I'm hearing, Sunshine. I assure you that I am not involved with anyone else," Petya insisted before turning over, pretending to settle into sleep. However, Yana wasn't willing to let the matter go. She cautiously got out of bed and approached his side. "Sleeping tonight isn't going to resolve this. Please, don't make a fool out of me. Have the courage to admit it if you have been unfaithful," Yana pleaded, her emotions running high. Petya realized that he couldn't outwit her with words alone. He decided to take a bold approach instead. "Fine, let's hypothetically say that you're right. Let's pretend, even though it's utter nonsense. What happens next?" he challenged. As Jana observed her husband, she couldn't help but marvel at his audacity. This wasn't the same loving Petyanka she adored. He appeared distant and unfamiliar, like an entirely different person. "What happens next? First, I want to understand just one thing. Why? What was lacking in our relationship that made you think you'd be better off in someone else's arms?" she asked, genuinely seeking to grasp the reasons behind their deteriorating connection. Everything seemed nearly perfect for them. They had married out of love, not foolishness, and had spent their first 3 years together. Eventually, their parents helped them purchase an apartment, albeit not immediately. They didn't even have to worry about the mortgage. Life was to be lived and enjoyed, and then there was Nastya. Petya's face contorted with anger as he replied, "Did you actually think I would tolerate the way your parents disrespected me?" Yana was taken aback by the immense contempt on his face, struggling to fully comprehend the situation. "What do you mean, they disrespected you?" she inquired, genuinely confused. Petya responded, "How? They bought the apartment for us, but they put it solely in your name. Who does that? Their intentions were clear. They wanted us to split up. It was just a matter of time." This revelation left Yana stunned. While she had suspected that Pedya wasn't thrilled about the arrangement, she had never realized the extent to which he felt humiliated. It was news to her. "Why didn't you leave immediately if you were so offended? Why didn't you leave me? Or did you wait until I got pregnant? It's clear that you're an unhappy man. My parents generously provided us with a place to live, but you seem to resent it. And by the way, do you know why they only offered it to me? I actually asked them not to do it, but they didn't listen." Pedya was taken aback by this revelation. He had no idea that she had asked her parents to change their decision, although it didn't really matter now. Reluctantly, he asked, "Why?" "Well, it's because of that incident at the wedding 3 years ago, when you flirted with my cousin in front of everyone," she explained. "My parents thought you were being disrespectful, and I tried to defend you. But they had witnessed everything and wouldn't listen to my explanations." Pedya was stunned, so it was all his own fault. That night, he had been heavily intoxicated and barely remembered anything about his behavior. He asked contemptuously, "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because you never asked," she replied, her tone filled with frustration. "And I was foolish enough to convince myself that everything was fine for so long." Jaina began to feel nervous, realizing that she needed to calm down. Despite her husband's betrayal, she knew the child was innocent in all of this. She went to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and struggled to drink it, finding a small bit of relief. One question consumed her thoughts. What should she do next? The resentment she felt was overwhelming. She couldn't help but think of Nastya, a friend whom she had trusted. How could she betray her in such a way? And Pedya, too. He had become involved with their neighbor, someone who was almost her best friend. It was all too much to bear. She sat at the table, attempting to gather her thoughts. Deep down, she already knew what her decision was, but she couldn't deny how difficult it would be. After about 30 minutes, Pedya couldn't bear it any longer and entered the kitchen. Finally, his conscience began to gnaw at him. He had believed that Yana had asked her parents to give her a gift. He thought that by sleeping with someone else, he was punishing her. However, he now realized that he was only digging himself deeper into a hole. "Jan, let's talk," he suggested, hoping for a chance to rebuild what they had. "We've already discussed everything." "There's nothing left to say," she responded sadly. "But we're married. You're pregnant. We're about to have a baby. We have a lot to discuss," he insisted, pleading for her understanding. "You know, that's something you should have thought about before you slept with my friend." "Now, it's all just a load of bullshit," she said with a tinge of anger in her voice. Pedya crouched down beside her, trying to reach out and touch her knees, but Yana jumped up, repulsed by the idea that he had used those very hands on another woman, perhaps even today, and now he was attempting to touch her. "Pedya, pack your things and leave. It's over between us," she said, her voice filled with confidence, though she appeared broken inside. I felt a heavy wave of sadness washing over me. Jenna and I had always imagined growing old together, but now everything was about to change. Just yesterday, she had been overjoyed about our beautiful family and the baby on the way. But now, it seemed like none of that mattered. "You're not going to kick me out tonight, are you?" I asked, hoping for some reassurance. Jaina replied with a heavy sigh, "You don't have to go very far. Just a few floors down. They're waiting for you." I felt my heart sink as I responded, "No one's waiting for me there. Nastya didn't want you to know. She's just a friend. Yours too." Jaina scoffed and said, "A good friend? Do you really believe that? Don't you see she's been pursuing you all this time? She never planned to be with you. You don't understand women at all. Just go to her, she'll be happy to have you." "But I don't want to," I protested. "It doesn't matter. Just go away," Jaina replied coldly. Defeated, I walked into the bedroom and got dressed, yet I couldn't bring myself to pack my things just yet. Without saying goodbye, I left the apartment, headed towards Nastya's place. I wanted to see if she would at least let me spend the night, but deep down, I had a feeling that things might not go as planned. Nastya, still awake and filled with worry, sensed that something was off. She feared that I would reconcile with Jana and leave her before the birth of our child. It felt inhumane to her. However, there was a nagging suspicion that her fears might become reality. Her hunch was confirmed when the doorbell rang close to midnight. Nastya cautiously looked through the peephole and saw me standing there. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "Jana kicked me out. She found out everything," I muttered. "Will you let me in?" Nastya hadn't intended to kick him out. She was simply expecting him to come downstairs to smoke and give her an update. However, Janka proved to be more astute than they had initially thought. Nastya had hoped that her husband's positive changes would throw off any suspicions, but she was mistaken. "Will you tell me what happened?" asked Nastya. "I didn't even realize it myself. I followed all the advice you gave me, but she confronted me directly and asked, 'Are you having an affair with Nastya?' I tried to come up with an excuse, but it didn't work," you replied. "And that was it?" inquired Nastya. "No, then she asked me why I betrayed her," he continued. Nastya's curiosity grew. She and Petya had engaged in many conversations, but he rarely mentioned his family. This bothered her. "What did you tell her?" Nastya asked. Petya appeared especially upset that day, clearly having lost his composure. He had forgotten to be cautious. There was a reason he avoided discussing his family. He was embarrassed to admit that in his own home, he felt insignificant and unworthy, or at least that was what he believed. The man confided in his mistress, recounting every detail of his actions in an attempt to relieve his guilty conscience. Unaware of the consequences, he failed to realize his mistake. Nastya listened and asked a crucial question. "So, the apartment belongs to Yana, not you?" The answer held great significance. Nastya immediately envisioned Yana leaving and herself taking her place. She believed she was better suited to be his wife, and was determined not to let Petya stray. However, everything changed when it became clear that Yana would retain ownership of the two-bedroom apartment. "Oh, really?" Nastya smiled and then informed Petya that he couldn't stay at her place for the night. Her mother would return from her shift soon, and her father would be back from the country in the morning. Petya had no choice but to spend the night in his car at the parking lot, something he had never experienced before. When he returned home the next morning, Yana had already packed everything. She refused to listen or forgive him, as certain actions can't be overlooked. A few months later, Yana gave birth to their child, but Petya had already moved to another city and had no plans to maintain a relationship with his ex-wife or acknowledge his daughter. Yana chose not to pursue alimony or search for him, wanting to completely erase him and the situation from her life. She put the apartment up for sale and, after finding buyers, moved to a new place with her daughter, away from Nastya and the nightmare she had endured. Yana always believed in a woman's intuition, trusting her sixth sense to detect infidelity from the man she loves. She promised herself that she would never doubt her instincts again.